And those in the chamber, you're very welcome to the July meeting of the Planning Committee. I also note that Councillor Irvine is online. I welcome people on the WebEx system and anyone viewing from home as well. So on our agenda then, item 1 is apologies, member. Councillor Robinson.
Councillor Mahan.
Councillor Mahan. Nobody else is indicating. Okay. Okay. Item 2 then is declarations of interest. And we have no indications. And item 3 is to sign the minutes and confidential minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on 21st of May 2025, and that has been done. And item 4 then is to consider 4 files for decision by the Planning Committee. That's paper A. And application number 1 is LA 10 2025 0606F. And I'll ask our senior planning officer, Martin McCarr, to take us through the application. Martin.
Good afternoon, members. So application number 1 is LA 10 2025 0606, and it's a proposed rear floor flat roof extension. The applicant is Michael and Josephine Deehan, and the location is 11 Knockcarroll Grove, Omagh. The recommendation is to approve plan permission for the reasons listed within the report and subject to 1 condition. So as I said, the site is located at Knockcarroll Grove. You can see on the site location map, it's a large detached dwelling. And to the south of the dwelling, there is a large hedgerow, trees, vegetation, before you come to the next door neighbour's house. So in terms of what the proposal is, it's changes to the external rear elevation. So at present, there is a decking area to the back shown in grey at the bottom, at the south western corner of that block plan. That is proposed to be changed into a full building. So instead of decking, you're going to have 2 full floors. So in terms of the acceptability, in terms of policy, there's no residential amenity impacts to any neighbours. As on the previous slide, you can see that the neighbour to the south is quite a significant distance away. The proposal in itself is fully acceptable. The design and the finishes of the proposal are considered to be acceptable for the area. So as you can see in the plan, the existing elevation shows a decking area with stairs. That is now proposed to be changed to a sunroom. So you can see the decking is replaced by a single-storey sunroom. And you can see in this part of the plan, it's a flat roof with a glass roof to the top of it. Design and finishes are in keeping with the rest of the house and indeed with the area. No consultations are required, as the proposal is only for an alteration and extension. And again, you can just see the decking, which is going to remain as before into the sunroom area. The recommendation is to approve, subject to standard time conditions, which is 5 years for commencement.
Okay, members, we have no speaking rights in this application. Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Chair. I'd be happy to go with the recommendation and approve plan permission.
Okay, a proposal to go with the recommendation. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Officer, for presenting the report. I'm happy to second the recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, members, so we have a proposal by Councillor McGrath, seconded by Councillor Thompson to go with the recommendation. Are we all in agreement, members? Okay.
So the recommendation of the officers was to approve, subject to 1 condition. Members have granted permission upon approval, subject to that 1 condition.
Thank you, Martin. So application number 2 then is LA 10 2024 0866F, and that's a proposed battery energy storage system. Facility including switch room, comms room, storeroom, welfare room, CCTV lighting, columns, security fencing, parking, and a new access lane and auxiliary works. And Martin again will take us through that application. Just a wee technical issue. Okay, members, just to update you, we're having a wee issue just sharing the presentation, so bear with us another minute or two. Hopefully we'll get it resolved. Okay, we're back on track again. Thank you, Martin.
Okay, members. Application number 2, LA10 2024-866 is proposed battery energy storage system. Facility including switch rooms, common rooms, storerooms, welfare rooms, security fences, new access lane, and ancillary site works. The applicant is Electric Land. The location is lands approximately 165 northeast of 113 Calvin Road, Drumore, Omagh. And the recommendation is to approve plan permission. The reasons listed within the report and subject to 16 conditions. So members, the site location plan on your screen shows in red the proposed site boundary of the proposed battery energy storage system. You'll note that to the northwest of the site, there's an existing substation, which was approved by Sony, which is a Sony station approved in 2016. And again, you'll see it on this map. So you can see the block plan shows the location of approximately 20 battery storage units, and you can see all the other ancillary works as well. And that's what makes up this battery energy storage facility. You'll note also that there's a new laneway proposed which runs across the existing substation, and at that point it links into the existing substation lane to the west of this map. Again, you'll see it on the slide. So the proposed site is in a green field right alongside the substation, and will have a new access of approximately 100 meters running into the existing access, and then eventually makes its way onto the main Dromore Road. So the proposed substation has obviously a number of storage units within it, so it's quite a large one, and it's to fully utilize the wind that has been generated and unable to be stored. The key policy issues in terms of the plan strategy for the council is in particular REO1, which is our renewable and low carbon energy generation. Obviously there's other tests as well, but that's the key test within this application. And within that, there's a number of different tests that the proposal must meet. So for example, there must be no detrimental impact to public safety. Visual amenity and landscape as well, there must be no impact on that. So in terms of no detrimental impact to public safety, planning officers have carried out consultees with all the relevant statutory bodies, and they have came back with no concerns, subject to some conditions. In terms of visual amenity and landscape, that's a decision, or that's an issue that the planning officers directly will analyse. And given the location well off the public road and the substation which is adjoining it, no serious issues were identified. In fact, you can see within the slideshow now that the bottom photograph shows a proposed image of what montage of what the substation or what the battery storage will look like. So you can see that there's fairly limited impact in terms of the overall landscape. It's down in a dip. And remember, this is taken from that private laneway, not the public road. Again, in terms of biodiversity, nature and conservation, again, one of the key tests within REO1, renewable and low energy carbon generation, biodiversity, nature conservation have to be considered. You can see that there is a watercourse to the south of the site, but it's approximately 1.6 kilometers away from any watercourse which has any connections with the Foyle. So therefore, in terms of hydrological linkage, it's not really an issue on this site. And then in terms of local natural resources, obviously this is using wind, and that's part of the wider site. This substation is connected to the wind farm at Pigeon Top, and a lot of the energy and storage eventually comes around to this substation next door. So that's where the wind power is coming from, and that's where the energy storage is to be used. And then in terms of safety, consultations have been carried out with all the relevant bodies, and all statutory bodies have came back and have identified no particular issues. So the recommendation is to approve permission subject to 16 conditions, and as detailed within the plan report.
Thank you. And we do have representation on this planning application. So Mr. Gavin McGill, the agent, is connected via WebEx. And just to advise Gavin, we have 10 minutes sort of allocated to this part of the meeting. And I'll maybe flag up when we reach 9 minutes if you want to go ahead in your own time. You're very welcome, Gavin.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be taking my full time allowance today. I'd just like to thank Martin for his presentation. And I'd also like to express gratitude to the Planning Office on behalf of the applicant for their thorough and timely consideration of the application. We very much welcome the recommendation to approve, and should you have any questions, councillors, I'd be happy to answer them. That's all I have,
Thank
Chair.
Thank you, Gavin. That is an opportunity, I suppose, for any members. Councillor McLahry.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I welcome the development. I mean, it's great to see that we're going to have some way of storing some of the wind power that comes from our district, and then it's going on for distribution. I'm kind of, given all the green credentials and we know that our Climate Change Act, I'm wondering why they aren't utilising as much of the old lane or the existing lane as possible and running a brand new lane straight across two fields when I think it could have been shorter. But that's basically my question. Why is there a specific reason? Is there something in there that's of scientific importance? Is there something in that green area? Or why you just can't open a gap into the field and run the lane on up to the new site? Or just wondering why we would do that.
Thank you, Councillor. The lane has been designed in order to comply with guidance provided by the fire service, and also Sony wanted to protect their own existing access to the substation, so that the layout has been designed so that a fire engine can get in, maneuver around the site, and exit without any blockages or risk to emergency vehicles. So that's the main reason for the way the access has been proposed. There is an existing farm lane, but it was deemed in order to get emergency vehicles in and out in the extremely unlikely event of a fire, the access as proposed was deemed to be acceptable, or deemed to be required. Apologies.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor McLahry.
Yeah, again, well, I sort of get the idea. There's a full lane from the Calvin Road. I don't know, it's hard to gauge, but judging by the size of the houses there, there's 2 or 3, couple of 100 meters there. And then you get to a curve where it goes up to the substation and you just run a new lane up to the site. So I don't know how going an extra 100 meters up towards the site and then on up, how that makes a difference to the fire service, because either it's a brand new lane completely from the Calvin Road, or maybe even the Screen Road, which is just beside it. They could run from there as well. But it's just these are the questions that we have to ask. Is this totally going to meet the Climate Change Act that we're now having to deal with in Northern Ireland, given the court order? And is it really necessary to put in that length across the first field of lane when there's already an existing lane there?
Go ahead, Gavin.
As I say, Councillor, the lane, it may seem unnecessary, but the consultation with Sony prior to the application submission, one of the things that they wanted to maintain was their own access into the substation. So that's why it's taken off the bend just before the lane runs round into the substation itself. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Councillor McElduff.
Chair, on page 17 of the report, it says the proposal is considered to meet the policy requirements of the plan strategy without significant adverse effect on environmental or heritage features, etc., residential amenity and public safety. So it's more like an academic question. It meets the policy requirements. It might have some adverse effect, but it doesn't have a significant adverse effect. Could I have that explained? It might be a technical point or whatever.
Would that be for the agent, Councillor McDuff, or for the officer?
Or maybe more inclined for the officer.
Maybe hold it for the officer to respond. Yeah, no problem. Any further questions for the agent at this point? I have nobody indicating, so in that case, I thank you, Gavin, for your representation to the committee, and if you maybe just mute your microphone there, thank you. And an opportunity now maybe for the agent to respond, or our officer to respond?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. So, yeah, so what you're referring to is the recommendation, paragraph 8. So without significant adverse effect on environmental heritage features, obviously when you do any development like this, you're going to cause a change to the landscape. It's going to be a change use of the land. So what was there before is going to be different. So whenever we talk about significant effect, we're saying that there's going to be an adverse effect in terms of what's there. So, but it's not going to be significant.
That answers your question, Councillor. Go ahead there.
Thank you, Chair. Is it unusual in cases like this for there to be no representations, no objections, no representations? That's what stood out to me, just is the significant bit, and no representations have been received. And then there's conditioned approval, but no representations. Is that usual or unusual in a matter like this?
Thanks. So we have had a few applications before that have had significant representations. Again, it's entirely up to the people who live in the area or whatever to make representations. It's not something that's we wouldn't say that it's common or not uncommon. It's just site dependable. Yeah, but we have had representations, objections to like this before, but obviously not in this one. It went through all the correct protocols, advertisements, it works, and we've received nothing.
Yeah, thank you. Just going to bring in our lead planner here. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I think, members, it's maybe just to point out the pre-application community consultation and that part of the process before an application is actually submitted. So there's a requirement for the major applications, and it's been done for this application as well, that there's engagement with the community before the application is submitted and then a report's prepared. So I suppose the ultimate aim of the pre-application community consultation is to give people an opportunity to comment and become involved and shape the scheme before it actually comes into planning. That has been done through this application, and ultimately the aim is to try and cut down then on the representations it's received. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions or comments at this stage, members? And if not, we would like to move to the members' decision. Councillor Rennie, go ahead, Councillor.
I'm happy to propose the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Robinson?
Happy to second it.
Yeah, members, so that's a proposer and a seconder of the officer's recommendation, Councillor Rennie and Councillor Robinson. Are we all in agreement? All agreed, members? Thank you.
Okay, the recommendation was to approve planning permission subject to 16 conditions as detailed within the report. Members have granted permission subject to the 16 conditions.
Okay, members, so moving on then to application number 3 and indeed 4. I'm going to ask Philip, our legal representative, to comment at the start. Go ahead, Philip.
Thanks, members. Just to advise members that we have received a request from the applicant in this case that the matter be deferred to a future planning committee, to the September planning committee. The reason and rationale being that the applicant, its legal representatives and its consultant representatives are all currently on annual leave and are out of the jurisdiction and unavailable to consider the published reports and to attend the committee. Members, officers have discussed this at some length. Obviously, the decision in relation to any deferral of a planning application rests with the committee. However, as it is during the holiday period, members, the advice from officers on this occasion would be that the matter does get deferred to the next planning committee.
Thank you, Philip. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much again, Chair, and thanks to Philip for his advice there. I formally propose that it's deferred to September 2025 Planning Committee meeting.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Councillor McLaughlin, so that's a proposal by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor McLaughlin, that both applications, isn't that correct? Yes. Application number 3 and 4 are deferred to the September Planning Committee meeting. Are we all in agreement? Agreed. Okay, thank you. Ask maybe Martin to sum up there, perhaps. Sorry, Paul, make some more.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just in terms of paper A, then members, applications 3 and 4, following a request for a deferral on both applications, the committee has deferred those until the September 2025 meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So agenda item 5 then is to consider one file for decision by the Planning Committee. That's paper B, and it's application number 1, LA10 2025.
Chair, Councillor Irvine here.
Sorry, Councillor, I didn't spot your indication. Go ahead.
It's all right. I'll not take it as a direct stub or anything like that. Just on the last application, with regard to timing of availability or unavailability of the applicant and their agents, surely if they were on holiday, they would have, and this is purely just making a comment, they would have known that they've gone on holiday prior to the agenda being published, and they could have notified. So I'm just looking for clarity from Martin or Paul. When did our officers know that these people were going to be unavailable?
Okay, we'll get that checked for you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Paul will maybe respond here.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Irvine, it was the 10th of July when we were first notified that the applicants' advisors and consultants wouldn't be available. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. And we will note your comments, Councillor Irvine. Obviously, we've taken a decision now, but we'll note your comments on that.
Thank you very much, Chair. Cheers.
Thank you. And go back to Martin then for application number 1, item 5, paper B.
So application number 1 is LA10 2025-0069, proposed site for a dwelling and a garage on a farm. The applicant is A. Smith. The location is site is 90 metres south-southwest of 26 Blackhill Road, Pole 4, Dromore, Tyrone. And the recommendation is to refuse planning permission for the reasons listed within the report. So just as a quick update on this one, the agent has submitted slides which they wish to be included in the presentation, and they will be included at the end of my presentation. So in terms of the proposal, we have a new house on a farm in the countryside. There is an active and established farm business with no development opportunities sold off, but the site is not visually linked or clustered with the existing farm group, which is situated across the road. The site is not an exception to policy. Alternative sites exist beside the farm groups, and the site cannot integrate a farm dwelling. So as you can see on the plan in front of you, the site is outlined in red. Additional lands in blue, which are in the control of the applicant. As I said, the applicant is an active and established farm business. They provided us with farm maps to show this, but just to break down the proposed site in terms of where it is in relation to the existing farm buildings. So if we look at the location plan, we can see this proposed site is in red, but if you look out to the right-hand side of this plan, where you can see the area shaded blue, there's a cattle house just shown just before that blue shaded area. That is the particular building in which the applicant wants to visually link and cluster their proposed farm dwelling. Okay, so as I said, the applicant has provided us with a number of farm maps just to demonstrate that they're active and established. And this includes land that's owned, land that's taken in Conacre. And so we've got all that information. So we're satisfied that this information has met those key parts of the policy. But in terms of our refusal reason, we are saying that the proposed dwelling is not visually linked or clustered with the existing established farm groups. So, just as a recap in terms of policy, obviously we realise that you have to have a minimum of 6 years, which we have, but the site for any new dwelling must be visually linked or clustered with an established group of farm buildings. So obviously there's a separation distance between our proposed site and the farm group. So we estimate it's approximately 200 metres, given the site to be located at the lower end of, or to the eastern side of this field. So there's no set distance, as we know, within policy. And the difficulty sometimes can arise in what we can see from the proposed farm group or the site. And topography, trees, all different types of geographical features can influence how we interpret visual linkage. But sometimes it's not always about distance. The proposed dwelling should really read from the farm group. So when you're at the farm group, you should be able to clearly see the proposed dwelling from that point. So if we think about, we're trying to really take an appreciation of the physical, of any physical link between the sites. So really, from any surround vantage points, we should be able to look at from the main site or from the farm group and say, yes, that clearly visually links with that group. There's little appreciation for anything other than the two coming together. So for us, in terms of assessing this application, I think the key issue is the physical separation between the two units, between the site and the proposed farm group. So if we look at this slide, we can see the farm group situated on the right-hand side. Now the site is shown up to the top left. I suppose when you're on the ground, it looks a little different than what it looks in this photograph. The boundary, which you can see just at the yellow star for the site, the site is actually behind that again. So it's not even at that, it's another field back from that. So the yellow star is only indicative of where the site will be. So we really are well back from that point. Now, in terms of this proposal, the applicant actually has two farm groups, or maybe a number of farm groups, but he certainly has two farm groups. So you can see his principal farm group is located approximately 1,000 metres southeast of the proposed site. This uses a shared laneway to get to the public road, and that's an area where he has a significant amount of land, but as we'll discuss later on, for one reason or another, they have ruled out any alternative site within that area. So he is proposing to link with another farm building that he has located to the top of that map, the north of that map, which can be done within the policy. So this is a slide that the agent has provided. I think this slide will actually be included later on in the agent's own presentation. So if you look at the principal farm dwelling and farmyard, which is located at the very south of that plan, there's a red arrow. This shows a significant portion of land that the agent has outlined, that the applicant has. For one reason or another, he has ruled out areas to say maybe the field is elevated to the site. The dwelling's not owned by the applicant's family. In other words, just other people who live on that lane or who use that lane, and that is actually preventing them from proposing a site in this area. For one reason or another, it could be mortgage, and I think that has actually been put forward, as one reason in terms of the difficulty getting a mortgage. So there's alternative options that the agent has tried to rule out. But in terms of our refusal reasons, we're very clear that we don't believe it visually links, and that there is a number of tests within the linkage. I'll just go back, there is a number of tests within HOU 11, which is our foreign policy. And if it's an exception to a policy, then in terms of approving an application under HOU 11, there's two exceptions. Exception one would be that there's verifiable plans to expand the farm at the existing group, which we haven't seen. And this next one is that there will be a significant impact upon the amenity of any new dwelling. So if we go back to the original site location plan, so you can see the cattle house, again, located beside the blue area. So we have no verifiable plans located to the west of that cattle house or even to the rear that there'll be any extension to that, nor do we have any amenity concerns. It's not uncommon for farm dwellings to be located close to farm buildings. That's the trust of the policy. So we don't believe that this proposal meets the exceptions of HOU 11. So we'll just park that for a moment, and we'll move on to the second and third reason for refusal that the council have recommended. So the original site, or the site that's proposed, we feel doesn't have the ability to integrate on its own merits. So regardless of HOU 11, that a house on that site would not integrate with its surrounding landscape. So this is the site, and you can see that around that site, there's no significant trees. It's a flat bit of land, and really prominent from all points of view. Really, there's if you look at the site location plan to the top corner of this map, you can see that there's two roads. So the Black Hill Road meets the junction and continues on the Black Hill Road. So the site's quite prominent and open, and there's no integration that we would deem satisfactory for integrating the dwelling. And again, this is another viewpoint where you can see the access. Remember, the access point as well will require sightlines, which will require potential hedge clearance as well, which will remove any element of integration on that side. And again, this is taken back towards the farm buildings. So you can see the stars starting to move back down the road, back towards the farm buildings. Again, we would not be happy with that level of integration. And in terms of our third reason for refusal, rural character. So this follows very, very closely to our integration policy. So again, unduly prominent in the landscape and not in keeping with the traditional pattern. So in terms of our refusal reasons, we have SPO1, DOE 3, so that's our standard plan strategy reasons, but we also have HOU 11, which is dwelling on a farm, DOE 4 and DOE 5. Now, in relation to alternative sites, the applicant and agent have demonstrated on a plan for one reason or another why they don't believe that any of these sites around the principal farm groups are acceptable. We differ with that. We believe that there is options certainly around that area, and that would meet the policy tests. But specifically in terms of the actual other farm group, which is the one that they're trying to use to visually link and cluster, just where the red arrow point is, we believe that a site in and around there, or anywhere within that field, would be deemed acceptable. We know that the agent has outlined issues in terms of not having control of the sightlines and visibility displays, but we believe that that isn't really an issue or a big enough issue that can't be overcome. In fact, if we look at the location plan at the start, we can see that where the proposed site is and where the agent has put on his plan unable to gain access as not in control of visibility displays. Yes, he obviously controls the visibility displays on that side, but critically, the other side has a 1 meter verge, and we don't believe any visibility displays are even needed on that side. So that's certainly something that needs to be explored. So I have another plan here I'm just going to show you. So this is the point going to the right-hand side, and you can see a 1 meter verge before you come to a wooden hedge. So that's the visibility display that we believe is not in the control of the applicant. But when you see that clearance and that site clearance, it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly okay. And then obviously everything to the left-hand side or going south is it totally within their control. So we believe that there is other alternative options that haven't been maybe fully explored. And we have 3 reasons for refusal, and we're recommending refusal subject to them 3 reasons.
Thank you, Martin. We do have speaking rights in respect to this application. So we have Mr. David McKinley, the agent, Mr. Calvin McKinley also, and also Mr. Adam Smith, the applicant in person, and also Tom Buchanan, MLA, present as well. So we will provide 10 minutes if Mr. McKinley and Mr. Smith want to come to my left here. 10 minutes for this part of the meeting. We'll then have an opportunity to ask questions to the applicant or the agent, and then we'll invite Mr. Buchanan, MLA, forward for his contribution. So in your own time, if you want to just introduce yourselves. And yeah, we could maybe make sure that's working first of all. Yeah.
What have we done? Can't eat into my 10 minutes valuable time. Trying to get it. Should I go backwards maybe?
Maybe I'll get it
Turn
here,
up.
David. Do you want me to move on the slides if you wish?
Could you do that for me? would
Yeah,
you?
if you ask me, I can move
If we
them on.
Go to number one, that one then. Killer.
Perfect. No problem.
Sorry, David McKinley here, and the applicant is Adam Smith.
Problem. I'll give you a wee shout when we reach around 9 minutes. David.
Lovely, thank you. Couple of points on Martin's thing there. There's only 2 farmyards here, guys. One is the principal farmyard that we demonstrated that was no available sites on because of access, and we'll come to that in a moment. And the other one is this farmyard. There's not a third farmyard that was highlighted as an alternative 1,000 meters. Mr. Smith takes quite a bit of land, and the farmyards may well be part of that land, but it's not part of his contract. He only takes the land. So there's only 2 farmyards, this one and the principal farmyard. So thank you, Chair and Committee, for allowing myself and the applicant an opportunity to speak. Adam is one of a family of 3. One is a farmer. Kyle Adam is the animal nutritionist, and his sister lives in Edinburgh. The overall farm is about 160 acres, and he helps out in the farm most weekends as he currently lives in Moria. To do with work reasons, you can imagine the travel time involved getting home. His intended, and this is all about, is a lady friend in Enniskillen, and who currently lives in Humber, and it's her. She wants to return home as well. So this site gives both the occupants a good address and a good location that suits the both parties. Adam helps with the silage, milking at the weekends, slurry, testing animals, basically a general farming, and would like to do more. I've read through the planning officer report and the concluding refusal recommendations. Policy DO3 and HOU 11. Can you go to the second slide, please, Martin? Now, no, back one. That's it. Now, there's a farmyard, and Martin's thing, he also highlighted actually better than I did. There's a yellow star. Do you see where the line comes down where I've mentioned proposed dwelling to the rear, strong hedgerow? There's a large tree there too. So we're between the tree and that hedgerow. Now, to me, boys, that visually links every day of the week. There's no yes or no. That completely visually links. So I think the planning authority has gone a wee bit over the top on that particular request. Now certainly you do need integration issues, and we have a 2 to 3 meter strong hedgerow in front of the house, and we have a large tree behind the house, which is on a second hedgerow. Okay, so I'm disappointed the council decided the dwelling does not cluster with an existing group of buildings. We've supplied a photograph, and it shows the buildings in the site located with one viewed angle. That, in its own right, is visually contrasted with each other. The department would appear to have determined a cattle shed with up to 40 dairy heifers in it, and the noise associated to feeding times in heat animals, etc., as being acceptable. Look, it may be a farmer, it may be to a farmer, which Adam is, but not the wife. The department needs to consider what activities will significantly affect the amenity of a new dwelling when one of the occupants isn't a farmer. We've been here before, and there is significant health and safety concerns siting within 75 to 90 metres of a farm building. Go back to the location map again, please, Martin, if you can. I've included two further circles on that. One is the red line, takes you to about 90 meters away from the cattle house. Okay, so on the right-hand side of the cattle shed, and the cattle sheds only shows two. There's 4 or 5 buildings there. The last 15 years, the ordnance survey map hasn't been updated, but you can see to the right-hand side there, you can see the blue shaded area. That's completely flooded. The red area is a 90-meter radius of the farmyard. Okay, now health is smell, noise, and mental health. And Adam's partner, if Adam's partner is concerned with all of these, you can imagine that mentally playing on your mind. Is this not a mental health concern? So policy DO3 is considered acceptable if HOU 11 is met. We conclude that the proposed site visually links with the existing group of buildings by way that there are 4 buildings within the outline farm group, wagon roofs and lean-tos and bits and pieces there. Reason 2, contrary to SPO1, DO3 and DO4. SPO1 considers sustainable development, which the department has noted that the proposal is not sustainable development as it does not meet with DO3, DO4, DO5 and HOU 11 with plan strategy. We approved, I believe, that we've met DO3 and HOU 11. That leaves DO4 and DO5. DO4 is the planning office report state that the site is on a drumlin. It is, it's on a slight height. If you carry on through a couple more photographs here, Darren, maybe, or there. That's one further up the road from the farmyard. Now, note the house on the right-hand side. It's also quite high and prominent. That's already there. We've precedents already set of that, if to consider that as being a skyline. We've precedents already on the right-hand side sitting there. We have trees to the back, 1 large or 2 large trees to the back of where we're proposing to put the dwelling. And we're also proposing maybe up to 5 or 6 or 7, maybe even 8 semi-mature trees, just to obscure the view slightly more. Bearing in mind, we were here 2 months ago. With a site that had very little on it. If we have integration, which we have, we're allowed to complement that. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm adding an extra few, 3, 4, 5 trees, just to disguise the house, disguise the house into the sort of the natural environment. Planning office state that the site is in the drumlin. I would argue that the point that the site falls south and east. In fact, we've shown when we can locate the dwelling without the siting on a drumlin, but we're actually behind it. If you can go to the next photograph, please, Martin. On next one. You actually see in that photograph the slope of the field. That's at the gate directly opposite the other dwelling. Looking in, you can see where the site falls quite drastically to the back. You can see the trees to the back and the strong hedgerow to the front. That's the hedgerow that shields the farmyard from the house. Larger trees are solar and burned. Yet, yes, this site has integration. In relation to the comment that the hedgerow loss and retention to the entrance, displays at the end of the road at the junction will be minimal. What we tend to do is we can move a hedgerow. That's a thorn hedge on the small Black Hill Road, which Martin mentioned would be decimated if we create it. We don't. We slide the hedgerow back. It's a thorn hedge. You take a digger, you take a trench in the back, you slide the hedge back. We have that done in several applications and it's worked perfectly. The hedge doesn't lose any shape. It's full and intact and it's fully grown the following year. So there's no loss of initial impact from the site visibility space when they're created. The site has the capacity to absorb a dwelling without adverse impact on the visual amenity. We're allowed under policy to supplement or add integration to the site, providing there's integration there present, which we have. Can we move on to the next photograph, please? That one. Great talk about this particular. This is the home farm. See the blue line coming from north to south? That's the Fintona Road at the very north of the blue line. That's a shared lane. There's 3 other farmers in that lane, plus another dwelling right in the farmyard. We sat here 2 months ago with another application. It is you cannot get a mortgage on a shared lane. It's impossible. The solicitor confirmed that at the last meeting. But there is a second access through on the road's that one on the road down here. Let's see, Trillick Road. Yeah, a narrow entrance where they would bring cattle bits and pieces in and out through. It's not wide enough for a gap site. It's just an access. Now, even an access in planning terms is also sort of bordering on over development and bits and pieces. Is still part of it. I have nowhere there to develop. To say that there's opportunities, there's none whatsoever at that farmyard. It's almost landlocked. There was a yellow star. I think Martin had shown a yellow star up at the roundabout at the main Drumore Road. That's not even our land. I'm not sure. Maybe that was just a mistake. But however, there's nothing within that complex for that. So in conclusion, I think we've talked our way through all three refusal points. In conclusion, sorry, didn't actually we have still the a little hard to take on the dwelling on the Black Hill Road and equally prominent. We're talking about prominence. This is refusal reason 3. We showed you a photograph of the 2 houses, one already there and ours proposed. The precedence is set. There's already something on top of the hill. Not that that makes it any better, but we do have integration. We have something to hide between the two forms of integration, the tall trees and the hedgerow. I better give you a run there.
No, you're better than me, Tyrone.
We keep her going then, all right. Basically, go on ahead.
1 minute left there. Just 1 minute left.
Go on ahead, let her up.
1 minute. Hopefully this will not take me 1 minute. Good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, my name is Adam and I'm an applicant seeking permission for dwelling on my family's farm at the Black Hill Road. I respectfully ask for your support to approve this application as it is essential for my partner and our future plans, supports my growing role in our farm business as my father ages and ensures a safe, sustainable home that blends within the local area. While farming is not my sole job, I actively contribute by helping with livestock management and general farm work, travelling over an hour each way from my current home to do so. This dwelling would allow me to be nearby, making it easier to support the farm's needs and ensure its long-term viability. However, my partner, who is not from a farming background, is uncomfortable living near the cattle sheds due to the smells and environment. In addition to this, we plan to raise children, and the proposed site, 200 metres from the sheds, is a far safer site, avoiding risks from slurry gas and large animals. Policy HOU 11 allows an off-site dwelling when farm activities significantly affect amenity, and this site ensures a healthy, safe home for my future family, meeting this exception. The report suggests alternative sites near the farm group at Vintner Road, but these are not feasible. The fence
Time's up now. Just want to wrap up in a second or so.
I have about 30 seconds. But these are not feasible. The Vintner Road access is a shared lane, not owned or controlled by my family, and shared with 2 other landowners, including an adjacent farm, limiting our ability to secure sole access or meet mortgage requirements. Other sites are within the floodplain or have access issues, making them unsuitable.
Sorry, just in the interest of fairness, I think we've sort of got the gist of your contribution there, and thank you, and Adam and David.
Thanks.
And sort of the 10 minutes had went over by 30 seconds or so, so I want to keep it fairly consistent. But thank you. An opportunity, members, any questions for the applicant or the agent here at this point? Councillor McLahry.
Yeah, we have I'm just scrolling back to go to the site. This is similar to what it was on the last applicant. There's a plan that's showing the Black Hill. There's a couple of roads bits off it, but it's all the Black Hill Road in there. I'm assuming, judging the site plan, you're coming off one bit, but you show a photograph at one of the slides where you have lines. I'm not sure. It's not coming up on my. Especially that one there.
Yes, yes.
So I'm trying to see what.
Maybe slide 4. That's the one looking across.
One looking across with the lines of location of dwelling, Martin, through the gate.
Lines.
You're one.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, Martin.
29, perhaps. Just come up with the
There it
bottom.
is, there it is. That's the one there. Yep.
Yeah, back one.
Back one.
Okay. So there's a previous slide and it shows the lane coming up off a branch off the Black Hill Road. And again, the same question as I put to the last. Why bring the lane up that way and not just come through this gate straight down to the field?
The that gate is actually not at the top of the hill. It's the hill's about another 60, 70 meters and then sort of drops the far side. I need about 90 to 100 meter visibility display, and I wouldn't get it as it drops the other side. Your rules is 900 mil at that gate and 900 mil 90 meters away. But the brow of the hill will distinguish that. That's why that's the ideal place for it, absolutely. But it can't be achieved because of the brow of the hill. The brow of the hill is more or less at the entrance of the other Black Hill
Yeah,
Road.
it's a very hard gap to go to.
That's okay. That's answered my question. Thank you.
You're right, that's absolutely where it should be, but unfortunately we can't.
Any further questions? And I would just remind sort of everyone to speak into the mics
Microphone,
as
yep.
much as you can for the response. Councillor McElduff?
Thank you, Chair. My question to Adam and David would be, planners are saying that there are other alternatives, but you're knocking that back. You're rebutting that. You're saying there are no other alternatives, that it's either one site or no site. So can you briefly state why that is the case? Why the planners might be saying on the one hand that there are alternatives and you're saying practically there aren't?
If Martin would go back to the location plan, first of all. No, my location plan with the wee circles and all on it, if you don't mind. It showed an area of flooding. That lower half of the site is all flooding. So really from the right-hand side, the actual access into the fields is along the front of the cattle sheds. But she also used there's a silo pit there, so they would use that lane for buckwheat and silage and bits and pieces. I can't put an access there because it's unobstructed. It's obstructed. But to the left or to the right of that, you can see it's fully flooded. Now, there's 30 to 40 dairy heifers kept nearly all year round, and then two sheds. There's a small cubicle house and there's a silo, and a smaller shed beside it. Them cattle's there for sort of waiting to be cows, if that makes sense. So they're always there. Now when they're at that age, they're in heat. Basically, they're ready for the bull, for want of a better word. They're noisy, they're irritative. That red circle around the buildings, the hatched area, is the 90 meters or 75 to 90 meters that I would want his intended wife, to be outside of. Okay. Now there's also another blue circle on that, and that red one is the amenity space to the adjoining neighbour. If you look at his house, it's directly on the boundary, and I want it to be away from there. So I don't think Martin mentioned between the cattle house and the next lane, there's an opportunity at a site. The photograph there's actually tyres sitting on the side of the silage ramp. It's not the place that you want your entrance to your house to be. Martin mentioned that there's a visibility display. Well, I mentioned there was a visibility display issue. I would like to keep the entrance up as tight as it could. My entrance is 2.4 back. Your visibility display is 2.4 back. You mentioned a metre verge. I would need to be 40 to 50 metres down, maybe 60 metres down from the top boundary. So that's why there's nothing really available in there, the sort of roadside frontage type thing that would satisfy a sort of normal commuter. Where we've put it is he owns a field just north of it. You can see it outlined, and I looked at that site, but it's completely bare. There's nothing there at all. We'd looked at this site, and I thought that gave every opportunity for. Where in the southern aspect, it's actually quite low lying. We do benefit from, as Martin said, there's a drumlin, and the drumlin is a small height in the field, and we're at the back of it. So to go back to the main farmyard, we've had this argument before. I know it's not material consideration, but it should be. If you can't get a mortgage to build a house, what's the point in having the damn thing? Are you with me? There's no point in approval. So it is material consideration as far as I'm concerned. The Fintona Road access is completely out. There's two farmers plus yourselves, the farmer, and another house just right in on the yard. The other one may well have issues with visibility display. It isn't a concave. It should be fine, but it's another entrance. You'd have to put a second entrance beside the one that's there, and it's barely wide enough. If that makes sense. I would want to keep the farmyard and keep the new dwelling off it. So I've nowhere really to site a dwelling on that side, and that's all we have. You can see the land highlighted in yellow. That's all he has. If that helps, around the principal farmyard, and he's right in the middle. There is other outlying farms someone's been taken, but we can't build them, we can't own, so we can't build them what we don't own. That's my two opportunities. That answers your question.
Okay, happy. Councillor McElduff, happy enough with that? Any further questions at this point? Not then, I would thank Adam and David for speaking to, representing yourselves at the committee, and maybe invite you to go back to the gallery. And I would also invite Tom Buchanan, MLA, forward. I left as well. So, Mr. Buchanan, you're very welcome. We have 5 minutes allocated to this part of the meeting. So in your own time, if you want to go ahead, I'll give you a wee, I'll sort of flag up when we reach 4 minutes.
Okay, Chair, thank you, and thank the committee for the opportunity to come and speak on this particular site today, or this application today. And I want to support the applicant and the agent in all that they have already said. They've really set the scene as to the need that there is for this particular dwelling on this farm holding. They've also clearly set it out with regards to where the site is and why there is little opportunity for any other site on this particular farm due to flooding, due to the long laneway that's up into the farmyard that's shared by a number of other farm businesses that not theirs, and therefore that does create a problem for someone who's building a house and doesn't have the money to build it, and they need a mortgage. And obviously, as the agent has already said, then where's the point in having a planning approval if you haven't got the money then, or you can't get it to build the house? But I'm always glad to see young people who have an interest in coming back to the farm holding and to set up home there and to be part of the farm business, because as a rural community, the farming community is the backbone of our rural economy. The farming community needs to be supported in these areas where at all possible. That needs to be supported. And I know we have a council and we have a committee here who are sympathetic to the farming community. I'm looking to committee today that on this occasion you too will again be sympathetic to the farming community in this regard. Now, the agent has addressed the issues within HOU 11 that the planning officer has raised concerns about. If we take a look at the visibility linkage to start with, that is a grey area. That is a matter for interpretation. And whenever you do look at where the house is being placed, where the proposed site is, then there is visual linkage. I know this area very well, in fact, and there is visual linkage there within that particular area where the site is going. The integration issue, the issue of at the road where the driveway is going in, if you like, to slide back the hedgerows, that's not going to then leave the big wide open gap at the road. I've seen that done on a number of occasions and has worked very, very well. It's amazing what you can do nowadays, and that is something that has worked. Not far from here down the Dunquin Road, there is another place where that was done, and it has worked very, very well indeed. So it's back to the issue of the need that there is there for this dwelling on this farm holding. For the young man to come back again to be part of the farm business and to help out on the farm and to help to grow that business and continue to grow that business. And again, if you look in behind the cattle house where there was a question about putting a house in there, and the agent has explained that very well indeed. But again, even if it was possible to put a house there, and it's not, but if it was, that then hampers the development, the further development of the farm business in the future. So therefore, that has to be looked at and taken into consideration as well whenever a new dwelling is being placed on a farm. So look, I'm here to support the applicant and to support the agent in this application, and I look to committee that they will do likewise and support this application for this young man to come home to the farm. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Within the time, and you can go back to the gallery. Thank you. And we'll maybe provide an opportunity now for our planning officers if they wish to make comment. Martin?
Thank you, Chair. So a few points that I'd like to just clarify from the comments that have been made. And I'm just going to show you a slide because I want us to be quite clear whenever we're assessing the distance that the site is from the proposed or from the farm buildings. So you can see here the site outlined in red has a boundary to its western side, to its eastern side. And if you go on down the road, there's another boundary, another hedge line boundary opposite the laneway, which is halfway between that and the cattle house. So whenever we move on to the plans that the agent outlined, and indeed myself, on this particular drawing, we can see here the star of where the site is. That is the first boundary. We are talking about the site being on the boundary behind that. So if you remember that site location plan, halfway between the site and the farm buildings, there was a boundary and there was a laneway. So we are well behind that. So that's just indicative of where we're at. So just wanted to make that clear. Also, there was discussion about, additional tree planting, and yes, policy does allow that, but the actual levels of integration that will be needed through the promise of planting, I would definitely caution against that level of planting if it was to be approved, because that in itself isn't just in addition to what's there. That what we would need here in terms of integration, the level of planting we would need will be over and beyond just supplementing what is there. In terms then of visual linkage, and I know we've been here before and it's been debated before, but I think in terms of subjective, I think it's important that the test isn't if you can see the two together. You don't have to hide your proposed well. No one's asking for that, but the policy is asking if they can read together. I think that's different than whether you can see them together. Do they read together? And that is the test. So you can clearly see that the farmhouse and the farm group, the appreciation of the distance between them is significant. So it's not about seeing the two together, it's about do they read together, and I don't believe they do. And the last point I'd make is that the proposed alternative site, where had been mentioned that further business plans, but of course that's one of the exceptions in the policy. The policy requires that if there's verifiable plans, there's no verifiable plans. Yes, there may be something in the future, but right here and now, for us to assess this application, we don't have any verifiable plans to expand that farm group.
Thank you, Martin. Questions to our Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Thanks to the panel officer. Just, Martin, you referred to could be too much planting and screening. Can you elaborate what you're referring to there? I would have thought, just before you come in there, I would have thought if we're trying to get this, if we're trying to get the site passed, for example, that the more, if it needs to be screened, the more planting is done, the better. Can you elaborate your answer?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, obviously additional planting is definitely going to help integrate a site. But if the planting that is required, proposed planting is required to integrate the site in the first place, then we haven't got a site capable of meeting the policy tests. So the promise of planting, we should always caution against that, because that may or may not happen. So if the site in itself can't integrate, the promise of planting, I would not be using that moving forward to say that it meets our policy requirements. Yes, it can be supplemented, but this requires a lot more than that.
Just a couple of issues there, Chair. We've heard about the alternative sites, and the agent and the applicant has outlined why this can be achieved through alternative sites. Maybe if the plan officer can elaborate a wee bit more on that one and on the answers that they've given.
So is this in terms of the
alternative sites that you referred to?
Yeah. So the alternative sites, the one in particular actually is just beside this north of this slide that we can see. We don't believe there's any reason why you couldn't site a dwelling within that site. In fact, if I go through to the agent's own slideshow, he is highlighted in red his own buffer zone to indicate why he won't, or why he doesn't believe a dwelling in there would be acceptable, and indeed in blue. But there's an area in behind that would definitely visually link and cluster with that cattle house that hasn't been outlined. In terms of visibility displays, we don't see there's any issue of getting visibility displays. He has his own visibility displays in his own control to the southeast. And as I said before, going northwest, the visibility displays in situ. So in that particular example, we don't see any issue. In fact, even within the red buffer zone that he has shown, there's no reason why you can't site a farm dwelling in there. I mean, we have to try and make sure that we meet our policy tests here. And because we have been outlined with a plan to indicate why it's not going to work, doesn't mean that it won't work. It's just the agent's own opinion. We would be satisfied that something in there can work, and we have approved these before.
Thank you.
Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Margaret. Carly, thank you, Chair. Well, Councillor Thompson came in on the point I was about to raise about alternative sites, but there was one other issue that was mentioned in the discussion there. The precedent of the other house sitting on the skyline, the point was made. What would be your response to that, Martin?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one, because the very fact that it was mentioned that it was on the skyline really indicates how the difficulties that we have in terms of trying to think about integration on our side. I think it was acknowledged that they're both comparable. So that in itself really, to me, strongly advises that it does not meet that policy test of integration. And I think even the agent has indicated some a rough sketch of the house type. I think it was, when you look at it, it certainly wouldn't be indicative of what you would expect to see when a dwelling gets built. It would be much larger than that.
Thanks for that. But just, I'm going to return to the alternative sites again. Are you suggesting, Martin, that from your opinion, there is only one alternative site, or is there potentially more than one?
I think there's potentially more than one. Down in that principal farm group, could be potentially more than one. I know there's difficulties with the laneway, but as we've spoken about before in material considerations, in terms of our policy, it's not one of them.
Just again, could I ask, was that intimated to the agent and applicant?
I think
during discussions,
the agent was aware that the application will be on for refusal.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, members, our lead planner would like a comment here at this point.
Sorry, Chair, I keep knocking it off. Just I suppose members following on from a few comments that Martin has made. Visual linkage in the policy, it is about more than just seeing them in the same photograph or seeing them in the distance. There must be some sort of relationship or connection between the two. And in the photograph, you can actually see it's on the opposite side of the road. It's at the top of the hill. There's third-party properties in between. There's no physical link or connection between the two. There is an appreciation of a separation between them. In terms of the images that were shown, members, and I know they're only indicative images, but I don't think they reflect the true scale of a commitment on that site for a dwelling. Certainly some of the images depict the house being no higher than some of the ages, which are around 1.5 meters high, 2 meters high. So typical, even a single story is going to be over 5 meters, So in terms of the buffer zones, then we have 2 buffer zones which are proposed by the agent, which is 90 meters and 30 meters. As members know, there's no specific policy requirement for any of those separation distances. We take applications on their own merits based on the specific circumstances of each site and each application. 90 meters certainly more excessive than I've heard at other committee meetings, which have been in around 70, 75. But just to be clear, members, there's no specific separation distance in policy. Even with the separation distances, there's still opportunities in behind them, given those buffers. In terms of the buffer zone between the third party, there's a good strong hedge there between them, members. I don't think there's any need for another 30 meters or whatever. That leads me into then, members, in terms of the alternative options. And we've heard some discussion today, members, about engaging the exceptions within the policy. So there is 2 specific exemptions where you can come away from the farm group. One relates to verifiable plans, the other relates to amenity issues. We have no written or substantive information before us today, members. There's been some discussion verbally, but we have received no information in relation to those matters. In terms of precedent, members, there's 2 other dwellings just opposite the site. One tucked in just in the corner of the field, number 30 and then 33 at the bottom, which are both well integrated. So I certainly wouldn't be using that as a reason to set aside the policy. The site's elevated, it's prominent, and the hedgerows aren't sufficient to integrate a dwelling. I know, members, we have discussed the Duff judgment now a number of times and the requirements in the Duff judgment, and some of the comments has been made by the judges. And just again, the sort of suggestion by the judges that we would be relaxing policy in any sort of shape or form is certainly frowned upon by the courts. So the policies are there, the exemptions are there. We have no information before us that sort of engages those exemptions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Councillor McElduff.
Thank you, Chair. Sustainable rural communities. I think that was a point that Mr. Buchanan made. You know, it's one that I would broadly support. You know, we want to sustain rural communities. I suppose just to challenge the recommendation, the alternative sites, this business of inability to get a mortgage is not a material consideration. I recall this council engaging with financial institutions. I think on this very point, there might have been correspondence that went in several directions, you know, trying to overcome this business of getting a mortgage. So I'm wondering, is there any recollection of that correspondence? What was the import of that correspondence? And why is it not a material consideration?
Chief Executive might be able to respond.
Well, Chair, just specifically on that matter, it didn't relate actually to planning policy. It was much more in relation to general mortgage provisions and difficulties that were being encountered across house provision, not just here but elsewhere. So, and it didn't emanate from the planning committee. It emanated more generally from the council. And this was something that was actually considered in detail when the plan strategy was before members.
Okay, thank you. The notion in my head was that we specifically referred to the difficulties encountered by people on short and shared lanes, and that was one of the motivators for the correspondence to go to the finance. That's just information. That's all I wanted there. And then Adam's partner, you know, DE01, this idea that a distance from a house and a farm, between a house and a farm, you know, Adam could be more tolerant than perhaps his partner that doesn't come from a farming background. Is that material to DE01 is my question. Thank you.
Members, I think what's material is actually getting some detail on the substantive site-specific issues. We have no details. I wouldn't have thought, as I say, the buffer zones that have been outlined, those are not within planning policy. There's no requirement to site away 90 metres. So whilst amenity is an exemption in the policy, we have absolutely no information before us that would set out the specific circumstances of why there would need to be a separation in terms of amenity.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Councillor McLahary.
Thank you, Chair. We've got our planning officers on one side, and we've got the agent and the applicant on the other side, and they're giving us contrary information, and it's very hard to visualize flat things from photographs and work out things when you can't actually see them in person. And I'm feeling maybe I know I would benefit from, and maybe some of the other members would also benefit from actually having a site visit. But also this maybe would allow the agent and the applicant time to liaise with the officers as well. Well, as obviously it'll be September before we're back here again. But I at this stage I would like to propose a site visit.
That's a proposal, Councillor, and Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And likewise, similar sentiments to Councillor McLaury. I find this quite a difficult one, actually. And I think it would benefit from a site meeting and further engagement between our planning officers, our agent and our applicant between now and September. And if we get a site meeting, I'm happy to second that. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, that's part of the reason I was going to come in, but because of the issues raised in connection with the agent and applicants ruling out of sites on other parts of the farm, I support a site visit. I think the site visit should include the entirety of the farm, and find out what are the issues as well as looking at the site currently under consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. So that's a proposal by Councillor Maguire.
Hi, Margaret Carney. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just, when I heard the recommendation for a site meeting, I'm mindful that the application in front of us doesn't, to me, indicate that there's much flexibility in what has been presented through the speaking rates and what's before us. So just questioning the merits of a site meeting, or does Paul believe or Martin believe that that we can have that wider discussion in a site meeting that may vary this application, or do we have to look at the specific application as in front of us? Just clarification on that, Chair, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, members, it's ultimately up to yourselves where you need a site visit. I think it's very clear for me that there are other alternative opportunities here which we can explore and get someone a house. I don't think the applicant or agent have ruled those out. They're not considering those. So I don't feel that there's any engagement or constructive engagement going to be held by trying to explore other opportunities. But if members are minded that they want to go to the site for a specific reason, in terms of integration or whatever, that's a matter for members. But in terms of the actual substance of the issues before us and the principle of the site and the visual linkage, then certainly it wouldn't be my view, members, given the separation distance and the specific matters that, you know, it's a site that's going to make much difference on this occasion. But so that's my view. It's ultimately a matter for members.
Okay, members. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair, and hear what the lead planning officer said. But we as members, or I feel, and Councillor McLaury feels, I don't know about other members, but I feel to get a site meeting is vitally important, because we find ourselves in a bit of a predicament here. And we've heard it outlined by our planning officer, we've heard it outlined by our agent and the applicant. And we want to see if there's a vacancy, what's going on there with regard to a site meeting. And I've also said about, and Councillor McLaury has referred to, other engagement between our planning officers, our agent, and our applicant also. So I don't see what the issue is that we can't have a site meeting. I'm still seconding that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members, it has been proposed by Councillor McLaury and seconded by Councillor Thompson for a site visit. Are we all in agreement with that, members? Agreed? Okay. And one abstention, Councillor Maguire. Thank you, members. I'll ask Martin to sum up then.
So, okay, thank you, Chair. So members have requested a site visit, and the application will be obviously deferred until the outcome of that meeting, and we'll bring it back to the following council meeting.
Thank you, Martin. Item 6 then is to note the schedule of planning decisions issued in June 2025. That's paper C. Paul might comment on that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So paper C members then, planning decisions issued in June 25. So it's just a matter for information, members. You'll see the breakdown there in paragraph 2.1. There's 97 planning decisions were issued, and those are all set out then within Appendix 1. And you'll note now, members, for the last few months that we've included the number of weeks within the Appendix 1 column as well. So 72 of those relate to planning applications, 5 certificates of lawful development, 6 non-material changes, and 14 discharge of conditions, members. And the details then are set out within Table 1 and also Table 2. So a slight increase in comparison to previous months, members, and paper is just for noting. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Irvine?
Yeah, happy to note, but I'm happy to say we're processing a lot quicker from the previous quarter as well. So well done to our officers.
Yeah, absolutely. And Councillor Robinson seconds that, noting. So item 7 then is to note the update report on planning enforcement for June 25, paper D.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So members, paper D again, and again, it's a paper for information, and it's an update then in relation to planning enforcement. Planning enforcement specifically then in June 25. So there was one enforcement notice issued, members, and that related to a roof being development carried out without the benefit of planning permission. In terms of the caseload update, members, then there were 6 enforcement cases closed in June, with 8 new cases opened. And so that leaves the total number of live enforcement cases now sitting at 209. And then the breakdown, members, of the cases opened and closed then are detailed within paragraphs 2.3 and 2.4. We have then our bar charts, which sort of shows the trends over the past few months. And broadly, I suppose, looking back to December, there's a slight decrease overall. So hopefully with the enforcement strategy, we'll continue to process those cases quicker. 2.5 members then sets out the detail in terms of numbers at each stage of the investigation, and then there's some sub-stages as well, but broadly that sets out where we're at the different stages. Members, so just really planning enforcement report then for noting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that's for noting. So proposed note, Councillor McElduff, seconded by Councillor McGrath. And item 8 is to note a report on, item 8 is to note report on proposal of application notice, paper E. All again there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So members, this is an application for a proposal of application notice which we've received, and it's paper E again, just for information. So this PAN, it's LA 10 2025-0712, and it relates to phase 1 and working of minerals, which is limestone, and it'll involve a northerly and easterly lateral extension to the existing quarry, and that quarry then is in Cleggan. It's Cleggan Quarry in Belcoo, members. You may be familiar with it. The PAN was received on the 27th of June, and the details are all set out there in terms of pre-application community consultation. There'll be a drop-in event, publication in the Impartial Reporter on the 19th of June, and then a letter notification to residential properties within 500 metres, and also the elected councillors in the DEA. So just for noting, Chair, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Rennie notes that, and seconded Councillor Thompson. Item 8 is to report. Yeah, no problem. Go ahead, Councillor. Yeah.
Big Chair, publicity of a PAN. For example, it specifies one newspaper. There's no requirement, for example, to publish it in the Fermanagh Herald as well as the Impartial Reporter. I presume not. It's a bit like the Belfast Telegraph being the paper of record for employment opportunities. And I remember saying at an Education Authority meeting one time that there wasn't too many Belfast Telegraphs where I come from. You know, so I'm just wondering why 2 local papers aren't included, you know, as distinct from one. Is it a requirement? Is it a statutory thing, or is it optional? Is there one of the local newspapers in Fermanagh is the paper of record and the other isn't?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So ultimately, members, the sort of provisions within a PAN, the proposals within a PAN is a matter for the applicant. They're set out within the legislation. So the proposals is before us complies with the legislation. And unless there was some fundamental non-compliance with the legislation, then we would just be basically saying that we're content. Representations then that are made are ultimately made to the applicant and agent as well. We're not involved in this process at all. It's really just for nothing. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And that is for noting. So you propose to note that, Councillor McCullough? Councillor Rainey proposed to note, and do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Thompson, that's right. Yep, have done that. Yep. Okay, so item 9 is to note the report on planning performance statistical report for 2024-25 paper F. Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, members, this is the planning statistical report then for 24-25. It's paper F, and again, just a matter for information. So it was published on the 26th of June, and really positive from our own perspective, members, and I suppose reflective of all the good work in the local performance improvement plan and programme that we have in place. So, we were one of only 2 councils to meet all 3 statutory targets in 2024-25. So just suppose running through some of the key details, members, are all within the report. But there was a total of 810 planning applications received over the year. That's marking an increase of 102 applications compared to 708 the year before. So application has increased by 14.4%. So total number of 764 planning applications were decided. That was a decrease of 47 compared to 811 the previous year. So the overall approval rate, members, which I think sometimes the public don't really appreciate, is that we're sitting at 96.9% approval rate. And that shows really the good work that's done through the validation checklist, the pre-application discussions and all those options that we have implemented. And that's above the Northern Ireland average of 94.5%. So at the end of March, members, there are 334 live planning applications in the system, 64 of those been in the system for over a year, and that's notably lower than the percentage of Northern Ireland average, which is 31.9%. 64 for us then is 19.2%. So 16 renewable energy applications received, 8 decided, and again 100% approval rate. In terms of major applications then, members, there are 14 major applications received, 22 were decided. They were all approved, again showing the good work in terms of pads. The average processing time then was 24.5 weeks, which was within the target, and the Northern Ireland average then 39.6 weeks. In terms of local applications then, members, 796 received. A total of 742 applications decided, 718 approved. We again an approval rate of 96.8% for local applications. The average processing time was 10.2 weeks, members. That's within the 15-week processing target. There's only one council I think was better than us, members. And that was Mid and East Antrim at 5.8 weeks. So Northern Ireland average was 19 weeks, members. In terms of enforcement then, members, 171 enforcement cases were opened during 24-25. 174 were closed over the year. And on the 31st of March, then, we had 219 live cases. The statutory target then, we were 83.3%, closed within 39 weeks. And again, that meets the processing target and compares favourably to the Northern Ireland average. In terms of additional matters, members, just a sort of note in terms of certificates of lawful development, there were 85 CLUDs received, 74 decided, and taking an average of 4.4 weeks to determine. So that was the lowest of all councils. So I suppose a fairly healthy position of where we're at, members. It's a good reflection of all the work that we've done, and I suppose really like to thank Darren and Lavina, Martin, Adele, and Seamus, and all the staff for all the work, and also yourselves, members. It's a good reflection and a good achievement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Well, I would like to comment as well. You know, it is a very positive report, and I do echo those comments from the lead planner in respect of our, our planning staff. Two things that jumped out at me, 97%, 96.9% approval rate. That certainly wouldn't be, I would say, the perception. And that is indicative really of the large volume, the overwhelming majority of applications that are approved, and indeed the fact that applications are coming forward to a high quality to be approved as well, in line with policy. And also the fact that we're one of only 3 councils to meet all 3 statutory targets. So there's a lot of positives in that report, and I'd add my sort of commendation to all the staff for the work that they do in between these meetings. So proposal to note then, Councillor McElduff, Councillor Tom O'Reilly, you may have just nipped right to that there.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I'm delighted to receive this report, and it just shows the good work by everybody concerned, but particularly by the planning officers as a team that are processing so many applications and processing to a 96.9% approval rate. So all of that would indicate that the work that we all do to try and streamline the planning process and to make improvements to the system that ultimately in the end is there to benefit our citizens has having an effect, and citizens out there can feel confident that they're putting in applications that are getting fairly judged on in a timely manner and getting back out to them. And that's very important. I think it's important that on the back of this report, Chair, that we get some good, strong publicity, that message gets out very clearly from the Planning Committee on that. I suppose the one that stands out then to me is the 64 that has been sitting over a year. And I'm just interested to, and I have a big recollection that this was explained to me before, and I'm sure it's going to be outside bodies that are holding up the vast majority of this processing, but maybe if they, in thanking the officers for all the work, if Paul could make a comment on that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks for the question, Councillor Riley. And the next report we're coming on these planning stats. So there's 64 over 1 year old. I think when you look at the trend, it's came down substantially over the past year. So it's came down from 100 and maybe 112 or something, but we'll come on to that. And I think, honestly, members, it is probably a result of statutory consultees and the difficulty of getting responses back. Certainly there's been a focus by officers of trying to clear out those applications. But just delays with consultees cause an issue.
And you're happy to propose, Councillor Riley? Sure. Councillor McElduff. I'll bring in Councillor Irvine.
I'll be the second, Chair, but the competitive spirit in me is, what pillar is Mid and East Antrim outperforming us, and what strategy have we in place? What strategy have we in place to deal with that?
Thank you. Well,
yeah, thank you, Chair, and yeah, I think when we had our workshop, we were talking about a Stewart's inquiry because the performance is so good. But I think ultimately, members, it's just the make-up of the scheme of delegation. I think Mid and East Antrim have quite a high, substantial delegation rate, even in terms of refusals. We've discussed that before in our own workshop. We feel we've got our own balance right, that members have cite over applications and call those in. That's appropriate for us in our council. So I think we we're content with how we're performing, given the balance and members' interest in particular applications. So.
Thank you, Paul. And you're happy to second that? Councillor Irvine?
Yep, I think Paul has answered Councillor McElduff. I think it's a lot down to the scheme of delegation that Mid and East and Antrim have in place. But I think referring to ours and the stats in regard to us, I think over the past sort of 10 years, we have looked at scheme of delegation, we've looked at our protocols, we've looked at our list for accompanying applications. And I think the stats actually refer directly to the dovetailing back into the plan strategy. I won't say we've got it completely right, but I would say we've got it very nearly right. 97% isn't a bad figure. And that actually shows not only the work that our officers put in, but I think the work of the committee as well. I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back, but I think we work well together as a team. And I think we have the right balance of provision, delegation, and challenge. So I think everybody should look towards their laurels and moving forward. Not that that isn't to say that there isn't room for improvement, as I'm sure Tom would agree with that. So happy to support the proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, councillors, and we're all in agreement with that. Item 10 then is to note the report on the quarterly live update on live planning caseload, paper G. Well,
yeah, thank you, Chair. So paper G then, members, is the update then on the live planning caseload. So this is based on Q4, January, February, and March 24-25. So I suppose, members, just focusing on what I see as the key issues here. The total number of applications received in Q4 is 216. There were 184 applications received in Q3 and 162 applications received in Q4 the previous year. So a general trend of applications increasing then, members, quarter on quarter. Then in terms of live caseload then, members, at the end of Q4, there were 334 live applications in the system. And it was a decrease then from Q3 from 345 applications by 11, and an increase of 2 applications from Q4. So if you look at the breakdown in the table, members, and table 2.5, you'll see total applications received then. So from Q4 last year, that's up 33%, and up 17% from Q3, which is really positive. And then the over 12 months, members, if you look at the end of Q4, we had 64 over the year. And that's down from Q4 in the previous year from 121, which is a reduction of 47%, which is a good trend. So I think that's the key points that I take out of the statistics anyway, members. And I think really positive to see an increase in applications. It's just for noting, Chair. Thank you.
okay, thank you, Paul. Councillor Devine Gallagher, are you proposing to note?
Yes, I'm proposing to note, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Maguire, second that. Thank you, members. So item 11 is to consider a report on the local planning improvement programme, that's paper H.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, members, paper H then, and it's a report on our local plan improvement programme, and this is a matter for decision then, members. So we have our plan improvement programme now. It's entering its 4th phase, I suppose, and we had a workshop then on the 30th of June 2025, and we discussed a number of options at that meeting in relation to planning committee meetings, but also representations in from statutory agencies. So attached in at Appendix 1, members, is the various options, and I suppose the status of where those options sit. I take members' views on the content then of Appendix 1. The workshop then, members, it was another very good. I certainly get very good value out of these workshops and the discussions that we had, very positive and constructive. So members were very clear on the options that they wish to take forward. Those are identified, and then there's other options in that require further consideration. That's all set out in Appendix 1. I'll go through that, Chair, in time here. So options agreed then, members, just in terms of a summary, options agreed was 5 and under consideration was 4. So as I say, the details set out in Appendix 1, members, and the next step then will be for officers to prepare, I suppose, updated guidance or protocols. And then for the ones that are under consideration, then ultimately bring back papers so members can take a formal decision then on those options in due course. So there is also the option then, members, to phase implementation of some of the options. They prioritise some over others. And you can sort of gauge the success of some of the options before you implement other ones. So that's also an option for members. And then in due course, when we do our surveys, members, all the details and analysis of those surveys then will be brought back before members. So looking at specifically Appendix 1 then, members, and going through it. So the first option then, the customer surveys, and that's really focused, members, on the granular detail of planning. You know, what have you been involved in? What planning function? Have you been an applicant, an agent, an objector, consultee, whatever it might be? So we went through that, and that was agreed. The interactive guide to the introduction to planning, the planning process, members, again, that's a guide, I suppose, will set out all the different elements of the planning process and all the different guidance that we've developed for each, pads or speaking rights, and it's to pull that together in some form of interactive document. I know a lot of people out there don't realise that we have our sort of duty planner service each day in the council, which is real value. You can just call up and ask planning queries. So it's to promote all those things and deliver a better service, Option 3 then, members, was to review the order of speaking rights, potentially with the following order: representations from objectors going first, then the applicant, agent or supporter, and then councillors and other elected representatives. I think, members, the intention would be to bring a paper back, considering the pros and cons. I don't think ultimately, members, it came to a final decision on the sequence of speakers. Similar in terms of the length of time for speaking rights. There's some discussion on different approaches and making a consistent and uniform approach, 5 minutes for applicants, agents and supporters, similar to the councillors and elected representatives and the objectors as well. But again, I don't think there was a final decision on that, members. In terms of number 5 then, members, these are the paper A applications with no objections and no speaking rights. So we would just, whilst members would have the presentation in their packs, we wouldn't verbally deliver the presentation. We'd just continue on the debate and advice from officers. So that was agreed. In terms of option 6 then, members, this really to sort of explore options to encourage agents and applicants to attend planning committee in person for speaking rights. And we've seen the benefit of that, just having them in person. I think certainly would be a better value. So we would bring a report back on that, members, looking at the pros and cons and where we can actually do that. In terms of option 7 then, members, we are investigating this from a previous meeting as well, but it's just the potential then they use drone or video footage, then they supplement the officer's presentation. I know some councils use that for enforcement. In terms of option 8 then, members, that was to explore options with the consultees. They try and facilitate their attendance at planning committee meetings where we need their expert opinion. They make it a determination. And the final option then, members, option 9 was, I suppose, this feasibility of whether the duration of planning committee meetings may be extended beyond the provisions of standing order. So again, we would bring a paper back to members in due course, setting out the pros and cons of considering that option and what might ultimately be the best way forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. So members, there were 5 sort of actions agreed there, and we'll be looking your thoughts on that and including the other under consideration. Councillor O'Reilly.
Chair, look, good work in progress, and wait and see how the sort of under considerations and exploratory sort of process works out, and that all seems to be going in the right direction. Just a thought that struck me, and I'm wondering, Chair, if it is feasible, necessary, or even easily doable, in that I wasn't even aware that there was well, I knew there was a duty planner that could be got, that there wasn't one appointed every day, you know, that there was a specific there. So just in an effort to help the interaction of planning members and the public and so forth, is it possible to get that list of, I don't know if the list is possible a month in advance, or if it's a week in advance, or if it's whatever the way maybe it's worked out, just that if you were talking to somebody that you said, right, well, Paul's the duty planner for today, you can ring him and ask your questions or whatever. I think it just creates that exchange between citizen planning member and the officer a little bit better.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Riley. I suppose we could potentially look into that. I think just in terms of duty planner, it can change day by day, depending on availability. The normal procedure would basically, you know, if members were ultimately looking to speak to an officer, normally come through to Darren or Louise or myself. There's no issue with that. No. In terms of the members of the public, when they phone the council, then they would be put through to the duty planner, or if they came into reception, then the duty planner would go down. But it can change daily members. But I think the message just needs to go out that the service is there, and we can explore that through the interactive guide.
Yeah, Chair, I'm happy enough with that. Happy enough to propose the
Was the recommendation seconded by Councillor Robinson? All agreed. Thank you. And we go now to correspondence 12.1. I'll ask Paul to take us through that item. It's okay, Paul.
Yes, thank you, Chair. 12.1 then, members, is correspondence from DFI, and that relates to the publication of model license conditions for caravan sites and traveller sites. And it's really just for noting members. I suppose in terms of officers, we'll be aware of these. We'll take that into account in dealing with applications and other matters, but really just for noting at this stage, members. Thank you, Chair.
That's right, and that's been noted. Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Feely. And Sinead's going to take us through the next item.
Thank you, Chair. So this is correspondence from co-ownership. And as you can see from the correspondence members, they're keen to meet with the council, and particularly in the context of our plan strategy. So they have referenced at the very end of the letter that they'd be happy to present to members of the planning committee. But I think my thought would be that I would anticipate members beyond the planning committee would be interested in this. So if members were content, I would be recommending that we would invite them into an informal briefing where all members would be invited to.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McElduff.
Yeah, happy to propose. I know we did that very thing maybe 2 years ago, but it's well worth it. This is an important possibility for some people, and they don't fully understand it yet. And in our council area, there's less take up maybe than some others. But I often try to point people towards, take a look at co-ownership. It might work for you, but we need the detail. Thank you.
Okay. Take that as a proposal to note. And Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks to Director McAvoy. I think it's as Councillor McAduff has alluded to there, I think it's a very opportune moment for them to come in or to give us a presentation. I just use my own practical experience of it. Almost 40 years ago, I had to make use of the Northern Co-ownership scheme to get my first house. So that's going back a long time. But I think that it is very beneficial to have it. So I'm happy to second that.
Okay, seconded. Thank you, Councillor. All agreed. Okay, I think we've one other item of correspondence, two other items, sorry. I'll maybe take us through those two.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, members. So the next item of correspondence in is again from DFI, and that's just an update on the review of the development management regulations and pre-application community consultation and predetermination here. And so members will be aware that we have been actively involved and submitted a response to a consultation on this. Really, the DFI is taking amendments to the development management regulations in two parts. This is the first part and relates to removing the requirement for a predetermination hearing, that mandatory requirement. There's also various typographical errors resolved by the legislation. They've also clarified the local development plan regulations in terms of annual monitoring report. And it's now quite clear that an annual monitoring report will only be required 1 year then after the local policies plan is adopted. But we still continue to monitor members. We have our own jot form, so we're monitoring the performance of our plan in anticipation then of a final report in due course. So really just for noting members, as I say, we've been involved in this and a lot of these changes then came out from the regional planning improvement programme, and we have inputted it at various stages then in terms of consultation and a formal response back. That's all been before the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, and a proposal to note, Councillor Devine Gallagher, Councillor Robinson, and all agreed. And one more item.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is correspondence from Derry City and Strabane District Council just in relation to their own plan strategy. And it's just really notification and in accordance with the legislation that the plan strategy would be adopted on the 10th of July. And actually further correspondence came through yesterday, members, just to say that it has now been adopted and be given appropriate weight then in decision making going forward. Just for noting, Chair, thank you.
Okay, proposal to note. Councillor O'Reilly, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Thank you, members. And I have only item 13, one item of any other urgent and relevant business. Ask Councillor Robinson. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. It's to do with the applications coming in. And sometimes the applications here is coming in with application comes in and then there's dispute over land issues. Can we sort of try and sort this out before, no, 3 or 4 applications came in over this last lot of years. Same issue about land. The landowner puts an application, the applicant puts in for land is no even owned. Can we get that sorted out? Can we sort it out here or have we to write to the minister or where do we do?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Robinson, I suppose with any planning application that's submitted, there's a requirement within the legislation then they submit a certificate of ownership with that application. So there's no prohibition to applying for planning permission on someone else's land. And when you do that, then you fill in normally would be certificate C, and there would be a notification to the landowner. I'm not sure that we would want to not have that provision because a lot of planning applications come in on land which the applicant or the developer won't actually own, but may own it then subject to getting the grant of permission, some of the bigger schemes, you know. So if there's a challenge then our normal process and we don't adjudicate in disputes in land, our normal process would be just to ask the applicant to confirm that the certificate is accurate. It's ultimately a matter of what members want to do, you're right to, but it's all set out within the legislation, and that's what we would be complying with at the minute in terms of certificates of ownership.
There seems to be an issue sometimes with applications coming in and another party owns the land and haven't got the permission to build on it or do any development on it, and then it has to go to court, and the man who owns the land has to take it to court himself to get the problem sorted out. That should be sorted out before it be given the plan permission, I think.
less fault with some further, Councillor Robinson, but I think normally we don't get involved. We're not
No, we don't
experts.
get
We,
involved, but
yeah, we
should
don't
be-
adjudicate.
It should be clear before it comes in here that the person who's putting in the application owns the land. Not somebody else owns the land. You know, I couldn't go and build in your garden. You wouldn't want me to come build a shed in your part of your garden. And an application, then I go and say it's my land. It's not my land. It's your land.
I understand
That's-
legally you can seek planning
No, but
permission
I
without
know
owning the land.
It shouldn't be. That needs to be sorted out.
It seems strange, all right, but you
Yeah.
can't seek planning permission without owning the land. So that's
Yeah.
sort of where the legal thing sits at, but I would defer to Philip, of course, if there's any legal advice at this stage. Go ahead, Philip.
Well, I mean, there is obviously good reason why you might apply for planning permission on land that you didn't own. Quite often, for example, a sale of land would be subject to planning permission being obtained on that land, particularly in terms of commercial ventures, but also in domestic situations as well. The key point in relation to the P2 form is to make sure that everybody who should be aware of the application being made is being notified of the fact that the application is being made. So it shouldn't be possible for somebody to make an application for planning permission on your land that without you being aware of it and being notified of it and having an opportunity to comment on it. Obviously, the granting of planning permission in respect of your land is not a permission to build on your land. You own the land, and you know, if it's not you that's applied for the planning permission and you own the land, you can determine whether or not anything is built on your land or not. That's your right or entitlement. Certainly agree with the sentiment that it would be ideal if all such issues were resolved before they came into this chamber, because it's a headache that we don't need in this chamber. But equally, land disputes can be extremely complex, extremely involved and extremely litigious, and we would rather not be the ones that had to determine them, to be honest with you. So there's a great deal of comfort on occasions in being able, just as a planning committee, to turn around and say, we'll deal with the planning application, you sort out your land dispute at a later stage.
Tricky one, yeah. Councillor McElduff.
Thank you, Chair. It does seem odd, of course. It does seem odd. I recently received correspondence of that nature, you know, from someone who is proclaiming to be aggrieved, you know, in the matter. And I've passed it to the head of planning, you know, for comments, you know, as to how one would reply in a situation like that. I think I've seen planning applications for housing developments on the site of a school, you know, and I often wondered, did the school even know? Does the school even know? The board of governors of that school, do they know? They may or may not know. I think the issue is your ability to realise the development, your ability to actualise it would come into play whenever you would have to have the permission and cooperation and support of the property owner. But I know where Paul's coming from. It seems very odd that this can be the case.
Yeah. Councillor Irvine.
Yep. Look, this issue has come over, well, before even the councils took over controlling actually or implementing planning legislation. And it's fundamental in primary legislation. And that's the issue. We are only the enactors of primary legislation. We're not actually the writers of primary legislation. So I think if Councillor Robinson quite rightly highlights an issue that has surfaced the odd time, not all the time, but the only way to actually resolve it one way or the other is clarity from the legislator. So that's actually going back to Stormont. And I'm not sure whether they would wish that, because if you look at it from the other point of view, the granting of planning permission in certain instances has an enhancement with regard to capital value. So for some owners, it's actually an encouragement for somebody else to take on the burden to actually go through the planning process to actually enhance the ultimate end value of some land that they own. So I think there are pros and cons of trying to change the approach. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Members, there's no further items of AOB. So in that case, thank you for your attendance, and I thank our IT support as well for the meeting and our officers, and the meeting is now ended. Thank you, members.